Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Friday, February 4th, and wow, what an interesting last 12 hours we've had here. Amazon crushing their earnings. That thing is trading like an altcoin right now with some massive volatility. And, the Qs in general, for that matter, also, just looking very, very volatile. That being said, Bitcoin is holding up relatively well. We had some interesting price action last night during the Asian session, and now obviously the jobs report today leading to some more volatility in traditional equities. But still, Bitcoin, crypto market, kind of doing its thing, independent of the traditional equity market. So definitely worth noting. We got plenty to talk about today. But before we get started, CJ, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Monty. I think one of the larger stories, aside from just earnings in the equity markets, is 10-year yields, specifically TNX, hitting new highs that have not been seen since 2019. We'll bring up the chart in just a moment. But, obviously rates around the globe have just been putting a little bit more pressure on risk on assets. We saw that in the sell-off of Bitcoin earlier this month. But, you have to wonder, like, how much sell pressure truly is there left if, all of this negative news around the U.S. equity market has not really bled into Bitcoin or the crypto market. So we'll see. Interested to, though, get into some charts.
Yeah, ready to dive into some things. I think what we're going to see this weekend could be potentially pretty interesting with what we've seen this week in terms of traditional equity price action, the relationship with Bitcoin, especially ETH as well. ETH looked very strong over the last 24 hours. So definitely want to take a look at that chart as well. But you want to start us off?
Yeah. So this is a screenshot from last night, kind of intraday price action coming from the Kospi and the Nikkei. If you guys are unaware, the Kospi is the basically the composite index for the Korean stock market, whereas the Nikkei is virtually the same for the Japanese stock market. Both have been pretty hawkish among rates over the past month. Their charts overall kind of look like IWM in the sense that they have broken down now after a very long correlation or a very long period of consolidation. But now with the correlation that we see below, you can see once we kind of bottomed and really started turning up in many of these assets, Bitcoin kind of followed suit as well. This was after, the U.S. close. Also had some positive news around Amazon, of course. But however, I want to move to the TNX because 10-year yields are now at levels that they have not been since December of 2019. So obviously, this is another one that's going to put pressure on risk on assets. And as a result, this is the local day high, not yet bleeding into the NASDAQ or any real other major indices, kind of just a flat day overall. But yeah, why don't we get to Bitcoin? Interesting chart here. Now that we have an actual back test of this level and are now breaking back above, I want to look at the 30-minute because, yeah, okay. So something that was quite interesting was the fact that we had held this line for virtually all last week. And now, we've fallen below. But if we can reclaim this level, this is not a point at which I would want to be short. This is a point where, if we consolidate at this level, back test and then go, I would actually look for a little bit more bullish posture. But then, if that cannot fail, if this is just kind of a blip, we'll see how that closes in the next 20 minutes. But ultimately, you'd want to see a close above this level, consolidation towards upward. If we do get another rejection and markets decide to kind of puke collectively, then, it could be trouble for Bitcoin going into the weekend. But overall, there's just not a lot to do in general. This is a waiting game in Bitcoin from my perspective.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, CJ. And, we have some people in the chat pointing out that Bitcoin is pressing up against that trend line that we've been kind of highlighting over the last couple of weeks here. And I do think today could potentially be, a critical day in Bitcoin's price action. Like you said, CJ, one thing that is notable is just the fact that we seem to be running out of sell pressure. And, obviously the market never technically runs out of sellers. There can always be, a catalyst to drive price down. But I think that makes sense given, if we zoom out and just look at kind of the sort of forces that have been driving this market over the last 3 to 4 months here. I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but so much of this negative price action has come on the back of spot buyers that bought either here during this period of time in October or late September, or even back here all the way in April, and we're underwater. As soon as Bitcoin dropped below 60K, that put a lot of sell pressure on the market. But one thing we talked about is that the long-term holders likely would have to step in and defend their position. We saw a similar thing back here in the summer of 2021, where each time we really whipped down hard to 30K, that supply was bought up quickly by long-term holders and whales. And I think we're seeing a similar thing here. So like, there's just not all that much sell pressure left. We're going to start getting less and less volatile swings down. I do think we could still, ultimately come down and retest the lows. It's going to be interesting to see how today plays out. I mean, we just got to keep an eye on the traditional equity markets. It's been an incredibly volatile morning. But I think ultimately what we're going to see here is another retest of this low, hopefully some more supply absorption. And I want to see us break out of this downward sloping trend line with sort of a rounding bottom here. I don't think we need to go straight up and out of this trend line and resume positive price action. I think we just need to see continued supply absorption, implying that there's a whale willing to step in for each spot buyer that's underwater at these current levels. And I think we are starting to see signs of that right now with this kind of flattening price action, and also this sort of divergence that we're seeing from the traditional equity markets as well. So I think all of that is interesting. I think all of that's going to play a role into this weekend's price action. And last thing I'll say is that last night I thought was some very unique price action in the sense that Bitcoin and ETH both looked relatively strong as we headed into the Asian session. I think a lot of that had to do with Amazon earnings, and I think you can just see kind of how Bitcoin is trying to develop this price action that's independent of the traditional equity markets. It's trying to rally, but I think so much of this macro uncertainty is still holding it back, still preventing people from stepping in. And that's why during the day we don't really see all that much positive price action. But I'm encouraged by what we're seeing today. Not necessarily ready to flip my bias yet, but this is a step in the right direction, showing a little bit of independence from traditional equity markets.
Yeah, definitely going to keep an eye on those rates as well. We'll see if they top out or whether they keep going, but obviously that will affect quite a bit. But if you'd like to see more in-depth trade insights and what Monty and I are doing with our capital on a daily basis, we have a trading community with a full charting platform and community live chat where you can interact with our analysts on a 24-hour basis. If you're interested in that and demoing it for the first week for $7, check out the link in the description below. We really appreciate that. But Monty, I'll leave you with the final word. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend as well.
Yeah, have a great weekend, everyone. As always, we'll be doing the Doge of the Day straight after this, so join us there for a more in-depth analysis. But that's all we got for today. Have a great weekend and trade responsibly. See you guys